to Sailing Sea Moon.
Hi, my name's Scott and this is Sandy.
Hi.
And welcome to our second podcast. And today's all about what it actually takes to become a full-time liveaboard sailor. I mean, Sandy, we've been doing this now for 3 years.
We have.
And we've learned a lot of lessons on the way. So if you're considering whether this sort of lifestyle's for you, then hopefully what we're going to share with you over the next 15 to 20 minutes is going to be a lot of value to you. So if it is, sit down and buckle up.
Absolutely.
So, Sandy, I know the first point that we had when we were thinking about what it actually takes to become a full-time liveaboard sailor was all around partnership and support. So why don't you talk everyone through that?
And thanks, Scott. I think it's really important that you have a partner that's willing to do this. So willing to do something unusual, because this is a lifestyle that's for the normal, I guess, for people. Well, it is actually. The people that we've met are really normal people, but it's just it's out of the norm lifestyle. So having a partner that really wants to commit to doing something a little bit unusual, I think is the first and foremost point of...
Absolutely. I always think of this as that we've enhanced the opportunity for adventure. So by putting ourselves out of the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, brick veneer house in the suburbs, pets and other bits and pieces, we've enhanced our ability to have more adventures.
Absolutely. And I think that was, for me, we were 6 months from being married when we set off. So we'd talked about doing this before we made the decision to jump in. We talked about it for about 12 months, but I guess there were circumstances that changed that we'll talk about those circumstances a little bit later. But circumstances aligned so we could do this. But having the right partner and trusting that partner, I think, was really important to us. So having the faith, we go through some scary moments, and knowing that you've got my back and I've got your back is really important.
We absolutely understand. There's a number of sailing channels out there, single women, single men, doing this lifestyle. But, there was a book and a movie made of that called Into the Wild, I think it was, and it was all about, at the end, this guy just wanted to be by himself and into the wilderness, and he died, and he really came to that reflection at the end that life is better when it's shared. And that's what we really feel, that we're sharing all these experiences, and it just, to us, it gives an enhanced experience, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else, that's for sure.
So, there's a number of we saw the Nick and Megan O'Kelly wrote a book called Get Her On Board, and I think that was super important for me to understand what it took to get my partner excited in the dream that I was building. And I followed that book. I thought it was a great resource. What did you get out of that book, Sandy?
So it was funny because the book's really designed for men to convince their wives to go sailing. So I stumbled across that you were reading this book, and I thought, oh, well, I'm going to read it as well. And it really gave me a bit of an insight into what was going on in Scott's head, and then for me to think more seriously about, was this the lifestyle that I wanted to lead, and what were the things that I could contribute?
And until we actually, were going up that east coast of Australia, and I was thinking, this could go either way. She could, after the next day, she could say, no, I've had enough, that's it. And the dream's gone, right? So you've really got to focus on getting her on board, making sure that you've got a strong partnership if you really want something to share with someone and do the full-time liveaboard lifestyle.
And now I say you have to keep her on board. So it's about how do we maintain that relationship, living 24 hours, 7 days a week in a fairly small space.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of single guys, older single guys living on boats in Bums Bay in the Gold Coast. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is you've got a partnership at home, and you think you might have kids, and you're thinking, I want to do this full-time liveaboard lifestyle. First thing first, get that partnership strong and bought into the dream. And then that's all the people that we've seen in our experience shows us that is the key to success.
Absolutely. I guess there is some other things, though, that were determining factors. So relationship-wise, making sure that you do have a really good relationship and you learn to communicate. And I think we've learned to communicate really well through this journey. But the other thing is, and I'll throw over to Scott, as you know, I said in the last episode, Scott is an accountant. So I think when we talked about budget and we talked about, can we actually afford this lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the first thing you think of. It's like, oh, it's all very good and well for the millionaires who can just, buy a toy like the catamaran that we've got. It wasn't $1 million, as you would have heard on the last episode. But the important factor is you do need some money to get your boat in the first place. Now, whether it's a motorboat or whether it's a sailing boat, our only experience is on sailing catamaran, so we couldn't give any opinion on that. But it's a similar idea that you need to have some sort of capital base. Now, a lot of people will go all in and sell their house and sell everything up, come up with a bunch of cash, and then they'll order a brand new boat and off they go. Now, unfortunately, if you look on yacht sales or boat sales, there are a lot of 2025, 2026 boats for sale, and that's exactly the situation that happens. People order them, and then things change, and they don't quite go right. So I would always suggest from a capital outlay perspective, go the lower end, the lowest end you could possibly do. If you don't have to sell your house, that's even better, because the lifestyle might not be for you. And one thing it's really important to understand is, whatever you invest in your boat, it's like, they say boats are a hole in the water that you pour money into. It's true.
It is.
So when you buy a boat for $500,000 or more, don't expect to sell it for $500,000 or more. There was a brief moment during COVID where you could have, but generally speaking, those things depreciate. These boats depreciate a lot over every year. We don't think about it because it would be scary to think about. But probably 50 or 60, maybe 70 or 100,000 per year is what it costs us to own a boat, because the depreciation just goes off it.
But the other thing, Scott, was that we didn't wait until we could afford this boat. We actually had tenacity, which is around about 100K Australian boat.
Yeah.
So she wasn't an expensive boat. As we said, she was a 40-year-old boat. We tried that first, and once we decided, this is for us, then we invested a lot more money.
Absolutely. If you want if you look at all the sailing channels out there, you want a brand new Fontaine Peugeot or a brand new Outremer or something that's really a lagoon 45 or 50-foot boat that's going to have all the friends and family on board. That's fantastic. If you've got an extra couple of million lying around that you didn't want earning money but actually losing your money, then that's great. We weren't in that situation.
No.
So we were in a position to be luckily able to afford this boat, as I said, around about the 700,000-800,000 mark. But that was it. So we certainly couldn't go a bigger boat.
No.
And the other thing, like, this is a common notion, which is very true. You can expect to pay around about 20% of the value, somewhere between 10 and 20% of the value of the boat every year for expenses. Now, whether that's marina berthing fees, whether that's insurance, repairs and maintenance. On a newer boat, there's less maintenance, but there's always things, always costs, and they just are part of the lifestyle. So, in order to have the financial side under control, you have to be thinking, you have to understand the cost, you have to be realistic about the cost, and then you have to make a decision. It's like, well, because we've spoken to a lot of people that would love to be in this lifestyle, and they say 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, and we'll have enough, we'll be able to sell the business, we'll be able to do this, we'll be able to do that, and then we'll be able to afford to come out here. And I think that is an absolute tragedy, Sandy. This is what we say all the time. Go now with whatever you can afford, because you don't know what's around the corner.
No,
right?
and we've met some cruisers over the last 3 years that unfortunately have had to sell their boats because of ill health. So their dream unfortunately stopped, and we constantly say we're really privileged to be the age that we are and to be able to have the courage to do this. And I think that's one of the things that really, has happened. For us, that's been our journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So things to think about. We won't go into too much detail on the income and expenditure side on this podcast, but just to know you do need that initial capital outlay, and then you will need more funds on top of that just to maintain it. It's not to try and talk you out of it. An RV or a caravan is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So in times of scarcity, which happened for that brief period after COVID, sure, you could get really good money back, but those days are long gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Sandy, we're talking about a bit of income and expenditure. Maybe tell everyone how we earn money.
Oh, absolutely. So I guess I'll start off with me. I was from a very corporate background. Just after I'd met Scott, we moved in together, and we had decided, just before we decided to get married actually, I was made redundant from that very corporate role. So I was a little bit lost. It was sort of still, we'd been in COVID. We were just sort of out of COVID, so we were still trying to find ourselves. We both lived in Victoria at that stage, so we'd had the harshest lockdown in the world. Luckily for me, I had the skills that I could come in and work for Financial Fanatics, which is the business Scott owns, and provide some services to them. I think I had around 6 months to plan a wedding and to then come on board with you part-time.
In the business, not on the boat.
Yeah, no, in the business. And once that happened, we really made the decision that we've been talking about going up to Queensland. Why don't we just go? Why don't we give this a go? So, that was the decision for us, because we could work remotely then from anywhere.
So you've got to be thinking, and also like Starlink had just come along and given you access to great internet no matter where you were, and we're thinking, well, why not? Why not? We can have meetings while we're sailing along. It's not a problem. We should be completely able to work remotely.
Absolutely.
Just as we were in our apartment on a boat travelling around Australia.
And there's lots of people that work from home, so why can't you work on a boat? Why can't you work remotely anywhere in the world? So, and that's what we're doing. So the technology piece was a big thing. We lived in St Kilda, so we were in a house anyway. It didn't really matter whether we were on a boat or whether we were in a home. So it sort of worked. I think the stars aligned for us that time. Me being made redundant, coming to work with you and your team, and being able to have the technology, because the technology wasn't there. And I spoke to my son this morning, and we FaceTimed, and we're in Greece at the moment, and he's in Australia, and I was talking to him about the technology and the advancements of technology in the last 10, 20 years, and there was no way that we could keep in contact with how we do now business.
And I can say, that just keeps speeding up. When we moved on board 3 years ago, we had the first Starlink RV dish. And that was the one that used to move, had a motor on it, and it would lock into a satellite, which was great if you were in a caravan or an RV and you could, put it on your roof and it would do whatever it did. But if you're on a boat moving, it kept losing the satellites, and it wasn't very good at all. We got the marine upgraded version, but there's now even the Starlink minis, everyone's using them. So the technology just keeps getting better and better and better. Not to mention 4G, 5G as well, which in Australia, in the top half of Australia, from Townsville up to the top end, there isn't much connectivity from a mobile phone perspective. But when you get to, and it wasn't much in Indonesia or across the ocean through Egypt, but when you get to the Mediterranean, when we got to Greece, we just use 5G, 4G, 5G through islands. It's amazing speed. It's just as quick as Starlink. So certainly in Turkey, that was the case when there's no Starlink. So yeah, the technology today with 5G is unbelievably amazing, and you can have video meetings, do everything that you possibly need to do while you're living on a boat.
Perfect. Thank you. I guess the next thing for me was, this was a big thing, could we do it from an experience level? So that fear, that self-doubt that we all have, can we do this? Because we live our day-to-day life, and, sometimes we get really comfortable. So what happens when we uproot everything and do something out of the ordinary?
Yeah, if you're an old salty sea dog and you've been sailing for 50 years, the advice that you'll hear if you ask one of those people, usually guys, usually at the bar drinking rum and cokes, would be, no. You need 10, 20 years of experience to work out this sailboat caper, and you need to race for a long time. You have to be part of a yacht club. Yep, if you don't do that, you need to get lessons. You need a whole bunch of things. And read a great book called Bumfuzzle, which was an American couple who bought a boat. It was, I believe, a 36-foot boat, similar size to what we've got a catamaran. And they went and had one lesson, and they thought, yeah, let's just do it. And they sailed three circumnavigations. They didn't have kids when they started. They had kids at the end of it. So unbelievable journey, that's an experience and adventure that they have. The short thing is, like, imposter syndrome hassles us all, and it hassles me as the skipper of the boat all the time. There's some tricky things that we do whether it's docking or whether it's navigating or whatever it is, or dealing with big winds. But the reality of life on the seas these days, with today's technology, even if you've got an older boat, you can still have today's technology, is it's a lot easier. And if it wasn't, then there wouldn't be thousands and thousands of people sailing wherever we go, right?
Absolutely. So I think, backing yourself and understanding that you've still got a lot to learn. And I think, the last 3 years, getting on board was the best thing that we ever did, because we started to learn, we started to meet people. People talk about their experience. We love meeting new people and really trying to get into their heads. Well, what do you do and how do you do this? And I think that's one of the things that we have really prided ourselves on, was just, we drop our bravado and just say, well, teach me, what do you do? And sometimes we take a little bit out of that person, and we take a little bit about that person, and we listen to all the advice and we take what's applicable to us. So we're really grateful for that shared learning.
Absolutely. The other thing is, what you need to be mindful of. So I'm not trying to say it's anyone can do it, step on board and then set off on your around the world journey tomorrow. You will become I like to think of it, the mayor of your own little city. And as mayor of the little city, you're responsible for the waste management. So that's garbage, or that's sewerage, that's water management. You need to have water. So whether that's making water or getting water from places, you need to manage your electricity. You need to make sure that whatever electrical, and sometimes if you've got gas, we don't have gas, but some people have, a lot of people have gas. So you need to worry about where you're getting that gas as well. So electricity, batteries, solar, you need to maintain what that solar is. Now, if you bought a brand new boat or a near new boat, you can develop some skills over time. Your propulsion's not just about sailing. You also need a motor to push you along. In the old days, they didn't have motors, but a lot of them sunk. So when a storm comes, those boats often sink if they don't have a motor.
Yeah.
So you really need some sort of engine, whether it's an outboard engine or an inboard diesel engine. You need to have some basic understanding of how to maintain it. And then these things do break. I think, we live on a what will break today machine. I saw a little post, a meme from Instagram today. And it is true. You sort of sit there going, well, what can go wrong? And if it does, how do we fix it? Yeah, how do we fix it? Because this isn't a lifestyle where you can just ring up someone and say, can you come and help me? Often you're in the middle of nowhere, or you're in the middle of a sea or a body of water, and you need to deal with whatever the problem is yourself. Now, if you've got a decent enough boat and you've had some experts look at it, it shouldn't be catastrophic, like your mast shouldn't fall down or you lose your steering, but it'll be a little thing. It'll be a light going out, or it'll be a blockage in your fuel, or it'll be something like that you need to know about. A
toilet system that stops working.
A toilet system that blocks, and you've got to deal with it. Sometimes I just, you just roll up your sleeves and go, I'll have a go. And at the end of the project, I know a bit more than I did when I started.
Absolutely.
And I didn't break it. Take lots of photos when you pull things apart.
Really proud of you, how you have learned and watching your journey, learning on tenacity and then those skills on this boat as well. And
wiring up.
We have a little less maintenance to do here,
Yeah.
but on Sea Moon, because she was a newer boat. But
I'm much more confident in, running cables to a switchboard and, 12-volt systems and things like that we need to add. Would I get an expert to do things when I can? Absolutely. But quite often, you just can't get the expert. The marine trades are very expensive and very much in demand. So often you just can't get them. You've got to do it yourself. So you do need to have some sort of idea about what's going on, but it's very much learn on the job. So that's one of the things I would say. I wouldn't buy a boat, pack my family on it the next day, and off you go. I'd ease into that a little bit, but I'd do a few training courses on diesel engines if you've got them, or outboard engines if you need that, and then I would do some sailing lessons if you don't know anything about sailing. But other than that, should be good to go. It's not as hard as what it seems.
Well, even just get yourself down to the yacht club. There's often a Wednesday night race that you can jump on board a boat and learn a few things. So,
absolutely. I think that's a great way to understand if you like the motion of the ocean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was one to get seasick on the river, so here I am a third of the way around the world. Okay, so I guess once we've made all those decisions, so financially we're okay, we've got a great partnership, we've addressed some of our self-fears and we've pumped each other up and said, right, we can do this. The next big thing was to actually, and probably a fear, was how do we tell our family and friends?
Yeah.
Now, for me, I had already left WA. I'd been living for about 8 years in Melbourne, so that's about 4 hours away for those that don't live in Australia, about 4 hours away by plane. So we're talking West Coast to East Coast.
The most remote city on earth.
Yeah. So for me, I had already had a little bit of that, but I had developed some really fantastic friendships and, really secure and comfortable where we were. So, breaking that news to family and friends. So the first thing I guess we had to think about was our responsibilities as, being parts of family. So, we unfortunately lost Scott's mum just after we got married, a couple of weeks after we got married. So God bless us all. But we'd both lost our fathers some years before, mine about 10 and yours a couple of years before. And my mum lives in Perth. So the responsibilities of
we haven't lost her. We've got a little tracker on her.
We've got a little tracker on her. Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is Robin? So what we need to do is, I guess, think about what family responsibilities. We've met lots of cruisers that have, had to go back and care for elderly parents. So really understanding what your family situation is like, and can you actually, be away from that. The other thing was we both had kids. I've got one son that lives in Perth, and all of our children are over 21 as of today. Happy birthday, Kate. But I've got one child. I've got two bonus boys as well. So Scott's boys, we call them my bonus boys. Making sure that they were okay and making sure that they knew, we still love them dearly. Again, it comes down to that technology piece. How often can we call them and making sure that we get them onto the boat, but making sure that they were okay with what our life decision was as well. I guess the next one was, thinking about our family and friends and some of their reactions. Telling our family was one thing, but telling our friends was probably more real because they were like, "Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean,
people do this."
People who love you and care about you, they do it accidentally, but sometimes they are dream killers, right? So you need to be clear in your mind what you're going to do, and then tell them. But it is hard to tell them because they think you're going to disappear out of their lives, and they don't want to deal with the loss. And so often they will come up with 100 different reasons why you shouldn't do this lifestyle. And you can come up with counter arguments, but they're just worried for you because they love you and they want you to be safe and secure. They don't realise that your life is going to be more fulfilled when you do this kind of activity.
Absolutely.
I was lucky. I think all our kids were very supportive. Well, that might say something about us.
Yeah, they were.
But friends and family were probably, they were the ones who were like, "Are you crazy? Why are you doing that? This is not a normal thing. Stop doing that." I know my friends were certainly like that.
But then they did support us, and they came and said farewell to us, and wished us well, and we remain in contact.
It's part of getting them on board as well, because have a farewell party, invite them all, put on some drinks and some food, and then they think more warmly of you leaving.
Yeah. And of course, when we cross oceans, they get really worried, and when we've been sort of in that pirate areas or areas of concern, they've really, sent us messages of concern. But I think
that the media, inflates things. You hear about a fire on some island, and it's a small fire, but the way that the media tells it, the whole country's up in flames.
Absolutely.
And so but so they don't know that because they're living in their world at home, and they think we're going through dangerous waters. But in reality, it is not as dangerous as it sounds.
So I think it's that once you have decided that you are going and you've got that self-confidence to say, yes, we can do this, then it's about how do you tell their family and friends, and how do you break it to them? How do you talk to them around these are the reason and rationale why we're doing this, and what we want to do, and how you can come and join us, and how you can be part or involved in our life moving forward. So that's really important. And then I guess the last thing that you do is you start to sell everything.
Yeah.
Well, not all of it.
We had a two-phase system going on here, but we were renting. But that wouldn't have mattered if we have a small apartment that we were renting out anyway, but we were renting our own apartment in St Kilda. So we just, when the lease was up, we were at month to month, and then we just planned on moving out. We got rid of a lot of our furniture and a lot of things that were really we were holding on deep to. We got rid of that, and we found it was great. Well, and I know Sandy will talk about that in a minute, but we had a two-phase. We kept just enough in a storage shed that we could ship up to somewhere if we bought an apartment. We were thinking we might buy an apartment somewhere in Sydney or Brisbane or wherever. Townsville. And then if we had to, we had enough. We had a bed and some furniture and a fridge that we could ship that up, and it would give us a head start. So that was our part A. But once we made the commitment, we actually sold that as well, because it's expensive to maintain that kind of insurance policy on your life. So I think that was a good thing that we did that.
Absolutely.
We had that, and because you test the lifestyle out. Sometimes it only took us a few months to realise that this lifestyle was for us. For other people, it might take longer, but it's definitely. I think it was a good plan for us to do that.
But it is really heart wrenching, because some of the things you have to let go of. So emotionally, you need to let go of. So, I was talking to Scott the other day and remembering all the amazing people that we met through that experience. So we put a lot of things on Facebook. We had a neighbour she was a young Canadian girl, just brought her first apartment in our apartment complex, and she come and took a whole heap of stuff from us, like couches and all sorts of things. Other neighbours would come by. Some friends wanted things, so we gave them away. We gave a lot to Goodwill, but we sold some things. So the young couple that came and brought my washer and dryer, they were about to move into home, and they were so ecstatic to come and buy this washer and dryer, and told their story. But then I had a mirror that was from my first marriage that I carted around, and it was almost like a Hox cross. What do you call it? It was something I was carrying around. It was like I was carrying around my ex-marriage. And once I got rid of that, I felt more free. I felt that, okay, this is my new start of my life. Because sometimes we hold on to possessions like they are the end of the earth. Like if I lose this, that's it. But it's actually really liberating and freeing to actually let those things go as well.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we live by is that people don't own things own people. So, you buy a house, and then you've got to maintain it and make it look good, all that sort of stuff. And then you're beholden to this house, but you can't take it with you, can you?
No.
The adventures we have, the experiences we have, they're not about things. And so, selling all of that stuff, I know, we we met motorcycle riding, and we both had Harleys. And, to sell those Harleys, or we practically gave the Harleys away, we couldn't sell them on time. Selling your car, you love that car. And it's things that you think you can't live without. But once they're gone, it's like, it actually, as you said, it's freeing. It frees yourself up to have so many more experiences.
And we realised really early on that we were never going to recoup that money. We were never going to recoup all the cost that it takes to establish a new home or, buy a new car, what have you. It was more about this was our avenue to release ourselves, and that, we kept some of the things, and some of the things around the boat are things that we hold really near and dear, but we made the commitment to move on to this boat. We try and keep her as light as possible. And we really do try and be fairly minimalistic. I mean, don't get me wrong though. I'll go out and buy a new pair of shoes, some earrings.
I was going to talk about shoes, because when we first met, you had a big cupboard full of shoes, jackets, boots, you name it.
Handbags.
Handbags. Apparently that's important for a woman to have those kind of things and to hold on to them. And it was a process that I watched you over probably 2 or 3 years come to that realisation that you just didn't need it. It was a hole that you were trying to fill, and hopefully this lifestyle fills that hole.
I think it absolutely does, and some of the joy that came out of that, as I said, watching other people, friends wearing the clothes that I gave them, or I know the young girl across the road sitting on our couch, and actually going to your eldest son's house, and sitting at the dining table that
was ours,
It was ours, to help him and his beautiful girlfriend establish a home. So I think, if you change that mindset, I think that's what the biggest piece is. How do you change that mindset from, I am going to give away everything, or I'm going to get rid of everything, and you're taking all that away, to having a different mindset. I'm helping other people, and by that, I'm actually getting way more in return.
But you don't, and I think, going back to the very first point on partnership, you don't need a boots and all strategy here. You don't need to sell everything, use all of the money that you can possibly scrape together to buy a boat, and then off you go. You really, if you have the ability to, you really need to hedge your bets a little bit to say, because it might be, as I said, 3 to 6 months down the track, maybe it's not going to work for us anymore. We bought this boat off someone who thought they were going to be living on the boat full time, and then circumstances change with their kids, and they end up having to be land-based people. So things happen.
Yeah.
If you've sold everything and burned all your bridges, then you're in trouble. If you can go through a couple of processes, I mean, we would have kept our motorbikes and our cars if we'd had somewhere reasonable to store them, but we just didn't. We didn't have someone with a spare garage space or... And
now 3 years down the track, we would have been saying, let's sell them because they're collecting dust and we haven't been home to use them.
And we have been home too. We were lucky in that regard. I'm not saying, most people that we meet out here doing the full-time liveaboard thing are just as happy as we are doing it, and wouldn't ever consider life back on land. So it is a lot easier and to get into. But I would always, as an accountant, I would just say, be conservative, hedge your bets where you can, but you will not regret it. If it's for you, then you will not regret it.
Well, so that's a lot to unpack, and I guess, in future episodes we will go into deeper detail into some of the budgets and things like that, because I think we've got... Well, Scott's definitely got
I could have spent half an hour just on the money section, but Sandy warned me, keep it light, keep it light
here. So, so thanks for joining us again today. We really appreciate it. And
we sure do. If you found any value whatsoever, if you could do the like and subscribe thing, that would be fantastic. If you could send it on to someone else, that's next level in terms of the algorithm and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
We want to get this message out to people because we think we've got something to give. If you think we've got something to give, then we really appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. If you've got it to this point, thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.